author Margaret Atwood says, you're never going to kill storytelling because it is built into the human plan. We come with it.
I think we are hardwired for stories. Storytelling, characters, drama, conflict speaks to us in a way that we make sense of the world.
People want to know the stories that are emerging from their community. So, so it is the great stories, right? It's the attachment of communities to stories about those communities.
I think storytelling is primal, frankly. I think it's something that's just integral in mankind.
And for almost 6 decades, Vancouver Islanders could trust our local TV stations to tell the stories of the day.
Television is very important to the local community so that their voices are heard, their stories are heard, and not only just heard, but shared.
I think local programming is very important. I think basically we're storytellers, and it's back to the old sitting around the fire telling stories, and incredibly important for a sense of place and community to tell each other stories.
Local TV is there to inform people about the community. So what's happening, the latest events, how the city is emerging, how their communities are emerging. I have nothing but good things to say about not only television, but radio, but newspapers, all the things that inform people about their lives and make a community and make a community come alive.
That shared experience, like an old town hall or caveman around a fire, it's that shared experience is why I said that we're social creatures, we need that.
But as we move into a more digital age, media are rapidly changing. And one of the victims of this change is local media.
Professional journalism is going through a whole other change, and you're seeing the centralization of journalism and the loss of journalistic expertise, not just in Canada but everywhere. And it's a huge problem because who's going to be making sense of these larger policies on a local level?
You know, there are studies that show that basically all of local TV and all of Canadian newspapers will be out of business by 2024. So basically Canada goes dark.
Between 2002 and 2011, 40% of local TV jobs were axed by private broadcasters, and many local stations now depend on young journalists who are rarely given the resources needed to cover anything more than crime and spot news.
We're now seeing, in some sense, a kind of tragic flaw manifest in the vertically integrated media conglomerate, where economies of scale are great, but the larger these companies have become, the less sensitive they are, just dysfunctionally, to the texture of everyday life.
I love John Adams. He is just such a brilliant storyteller. I also love local honey. I worked right here at Shaw TV on South Vancouver Island for 18 years. I started as a volunteer just to get some experience before I headed off to the big world of broadcasting. But I fell in love with local storytelling, so I stayed. And just before I resigned, I was the host and producer of the local magazine show, Go Island. On today's show, a new farm technique that will have your mind swimming with ideas. And the Greater Victoria Police Chorus are preparing for a Mother's Day concert.
Go is a voice of the community. It is a mirror of the community that this team turns on to the local people for them to speak, see themselves, carry discussions, move forward in dialogue, participate from sadness to joy, but all part of community sharing.
Go Island is actually a CRTC requirement. The Canadian Radio and Television Telecommunications Commission requires that cable providers like Shaw take 5% of their revenue and provide it to the communities they serve for a community access television station. The Go Island model is actually quite unique in community television. It has professionally trained journalists work with the community to tell local stories about businesses, nonprofit organizations, artist profiles, promote events. However, as cable subscribers shrink, so do the budgets.
The real innovation, the real story in some sense, is at the local. And I know it's easy to say that. It's easy to romance the local and talk about the local. We're all, champions of the local. We all live somewhere. But that said, it's functionally now very difficult for the large media companies to really do what they used to. They're closing local stations, even those that are part of chains, because they're just not paying for themselves anymore. And so you're seeing a consolidation and a reduction of even the conglomerate's capacity to address the local as they used to as a function of their license.
We know that local television is changing and shrinking, and while we can't turn back time, we can take a look back and discover what impact does community television have on creating and engaging community. We begin with talking to the people who have been part of Shaw TV's Go Island.
The impact of Shaw TV and community television has been huge for us. I think that perhaps the most important thing is that it's a sense of credibility, is that when an objective outside party decides to do a story about you and make that known in the community, it makes it seem that, yes, this really is some important information that many people need to learn about.
Andrew Shepard founded one of the first sea salt companies in Canada. And when Shaw TV first told Andrew's story, our magazine show was called The Daily, which we renamed Go Island.
Well, it's pretty neat because I'd never had anyone show up with a camera and follow me around. But what was really cool is for months later, like multiple months after it aired, was people would come up to me and talk about it at the beach. They'd say, "Hey, I know what you're doing," and they'd say, "We saw you on Shaw TV, we saw you on The Daily," and it really, I think it made people sort of think that they knew us a little bit, and it made them more comfortable to come up and share their experiences, and it certainly made them feel more comfortable buying the product because they understood the process and they understood a little bit about me, that I'm, just like a regular guy trying to make a living here in Cowichan Valley. And my local community refused to let me fail, and I think that the initial rollout with The Daily was part of the reason the community sort of came together to really help support us.
For years, the Victoria Public Market Society worked diligently to realize their dream of opening a permanent market in downtown Victoria. In an effort to gain support, they turned to community TV to help tell their story. We asked them how this experience of being on community TV impacted them.
It really gave us a driving force that helped us realize what we could do, and it built us momentum, and we were able to open up the public market because of it. When you're a small local business person, making connections in your community is what really helps you be successful. So when a community television show comes in and really showcases what you do and introduces you to the audience, it's the audience that really feels like they know you and they're a part of you growing as well.
Robinson's Outdoor Store has been part of Victoria for 80 years. And when the owner's granddaughter, Gail Robinson, took over the store, she leaned on the community television station to share her story in hopes to inspire people to support local business.
When you first interviewed me on Shaw, I was just getting the store started. I had no budget. I could never have afforded it. So from a store, from a business point of view, it's a gift, because you're getting us out there and giving us a chance on a medium that we couldn't afford otherwise. And then the other part is, people love to watch local television and find out what's going on in their community. And I've just become incredibly proud of this 87-year-old legacy that is Robinson's. And people come in, bought my first bike here, bought this, and they're really, really happy to hear on local television that we're still going.
Nonprofit organizations like the Mustard Seed Food Bank have a strong relationship with local television and depend on their support to help them with their fundraising.
The stories that have been done over the years, from what I've seen, have really hit to the heart of what the organization is about, and people certainly have connected with that. You know, we've been able to get that word out there in a far greater way, far more than what we could do on our own. Shaw TV recently did a story with one of our community members whose life is in the process of incredible transformation.
With my leg amputated, I slept outside for 3 months.
For Bob, every night became the coldest night of the year.
With engaging storytelling in this kind of format, you of course have the opportunity to draw a whole history and a whole story that just widens a perspective and gives people an understanding of why individuals have ended up, you know, where they are.
Shaw's commitment to local programming took them to the small Gulf islands of Salt Spring, Maine, Saturna, and Galliano Island. We spoke to the Chamber of Commerce President, Connie Norden, to find out how local television impacted their communities.
It is local television directed at a Victoria market. As a very local island business, a very tiny community of just 1,100 people, our reach doesn't even extend to Victoria. And while Victoria might consider Shaw Community Television as small and small market, for us that's a large market.
Another benefit to being featured on local television is that Shaw TV often repeats stories. And once the story has aired, Shaw posts the story on YouTube, allowing it to continue to have a life beyond the original airing.
That's really the value of it. I did have lots of people say they didn't see it just once on Channel 4. They saw it many times and kept saying, "You're on television again." Anybody can be on YouTube, right? The legitimacy of the story comes from television.
So people can come and visit the different art stops.
Another role of Go Island is to let viewers know about local events in their community. But as we move into a more digital world, is this method of sharing information impactful? We chatted to a local publicist who has worked with Go Island for the past decade.
Working with the local media is a huge piece of getting the word out about events. It's a big way to tell the story, and it really connects people in the community to the events. It inspires them to go, it inspires them to participate in them, it gets them emotionally connected to the events.
I love all the creativity that's gone into Art Stop.
Working with Go has been huge because with the longer time frame that you get to work in, the more the story can come out. So people, I think, have a real sort of emotional connection with Go because the mandate is a lot more about telling community stories and a lot more about telling positive stories. It makes people feel good about being in their community.
Television may be the medium where, you know, you're sitting and watching, but there's some magic that happens in the middle, and that's because you become part of what you're watching. I think we have a pretty strong capacity to engage people so that they feel part of the community.
When I was writing my book, Czech Republic, that was one of the things I looked at was what is the role of TV as a community partner as opposed to just pushing information out there. And I think that, you know, TV can really unify a community. If a television station is very much part of the community, they see what the issues are. They are not necessarily told by governments or powers that be or big business. They're not necessarily told by those groups what are the stories. They can actually see what are the stories. They can see what matters to people.
It just makes you so much more appreciate where you live and all the amenities that you have here and all the special people who live in this community.
There were a couple of stories that were done on various parks. One, I think, was done near French Beach, and another one was done on Rickles. And we went over there and took a look at those parks as a result of what we saw on Go Island.
So how does the changing face of local television impact our sense of identity with regards to where we live and work and play?
I think narrative is really important for how we understand ourselves, and I think narrative is really important about how we understand our community. So if the narrative that we're getting is not coming from a local context, if the stories that we share and that we communicate are not coming from a local context, there is an inevitable loss of a facet of our identity.
I think the engagement with something that's local in your own language, in your own cultural context. The signifiers and the symbols are ones that you're familiar with. So it's the proximity and the familiarity of what's said and how it's said, which I think makes it have a very special quality.
So there's an interesting sort of dualism going on. So Mark Zuckerberg is famously quoted as saying, you know, people might be more interested in a squirrel doing something cute in their front yard than they would be interested in something going on halfway around the world. And his algorithms and news feeds on Facebook are meant to provide people with what they're most interested in. But on the other hand, what we're finding out is that, yeah, maybe the cute squirrel is getting a lot of play, but important local community issues that help us come together as a society, tell each other's stories, and understand what's going on politically outside our doors, well, that's not getting a lot of play. And so while this could be a great tool for drawing people closer, potentially, the reality is not being realized.
For almost 6 decades, Czech TV has been proud of the local content it's provided viewers on Vancouver Island. But it almost lost its voice when CanWest Communications nearly shut it down in 2009.
The story of Czech goes back 60 years, so it's 60 years this year. It was the first over-the-air television, private television station in BC. In 2009, CanWest was in serious financial trouble, and they announced that they were going to be selling or shutting down a number of their stations, including Czech. Everybody at Czech here was given a layoff notice, and but we saw the potential. We knew that there was demand for local programming here on the island. We saw a huge outpouring from our viewers that were concerned that the station was going to close, and we decided to take over the station. And it has been a struggle, but it's been very rewarding at the same time.
We got gold. So Robert went out on a boat with a guy on one of the derelict boats.
The most important reason why local TV is vital is because it brings people together. We have 50,000 people coming together every night at 5 o'clock to watch our newscast, and that's important. Local TV, you have direct impact. You know, our viewers phone us up, or they email us, or they contact us, and often they'll get involved in stories as a result. I mean, there's no more, you can't be closer to your audience than we are.
CTV Vancouver Island, which is owned by Bell Media, is also committed to telling local stories. But like Czech, the uncertainty of their financial future has impacted them greatly. Can you see the shine? For fashion designer Teresa Lindsay, one of the strengths of an affiliate like CTV Vancouver Island is their ability to share local stories nationally and globally.
When something's done here, like one of our festivals, for example, or an award show, we're showing accomplishments, it should be beyond us. It should be that our city and our island is so phenomenal, people should get to know it better. So I'd love for more people outside of our city to see what we do. It helps us and it helps in our economy.
As digital storyteller Joe Lambert puts it, storytelling can help build healthy communities, create positive psychology, and a healthy self-esteem.
Positive stories by their very nature inspire, by their very nature motivate, by their very nature can take us to a place that we want to be but we haven't ever been. But vicariously through an experience of another, you can see yourself getting there. So they matter.
What I like about the community world as opposed to the broadcast world is that there is more of a positive and more of a good news bent. That's not to say you ignore injustices. Of course, those will get light shed on them. But for the most part, it is really time that community television and television, local television in general, moves away from the car crash, moves away from the murder, moves into more in-depth, more people story. That's where the value is in my mind.
I think local television is one of the best examples of that because you're engaging with local personalities who are out trying local, whether it's restaurants or events or causes, whatever that is. It's entertaining, it's engaging, and it's about your community. So how can you not engage in that?
The future of local television remains uncertain. But there are lots of ideas on how we can move forward.
I don't think we will lose local television. I think we've, for my 30-odd years in this business, I've been through ups and downs and layoffs. At the end of the day, there is resourceful, dedicated people that get the job done, that will continue to get the job done.
I think we are starting to see a new model of private media. And that will be very much more grassroots. People will form their own companies. They won't care whether they make a lot of money, they'll just want to make stuff. But here's my little bit of wisdom, and this is what we must not forget. You have to look at the source of the support for this. It's why I feel so strongly about having a public broadcasting balance. Public broadcasting can be the incubator for many people who want to tell either difficult stories where you do need money, you need to have insurance, you need to have time, and if you can provide a space where that can be done without commercial influence, then you have a bar to measure other things against.
Right now, we're trapped in what some people call filter bubbles. So Google's delivering us more of what we want to see, Facebook's delivering us more of what we want to see, and that's why we're all watching Trump and the Kardashians. In my ideal world, rather than just a filter bubble that's filtering based on what it thinks I want to see, those dramatic or salacious or what have you, very interesting news pieces, there would be an additional filter for providing me with local news that is important to me and helps me integrate with my community. So right now, if I want to integrate with my community, I shut everything off. I shouldn't have to shut it off. I should have a filter that delivers to me those things that tell me what's happening with people next door or around the corner or down the street.
What news needs to do is to reinvent itself. Print journalism is the centerpiece. That's where the research is done. That's where the other media pick up that content in an iterative way. That's where we get most of our, kind of manual for living. And if we let print journalism suffer or perish, we suffer a loss in our society it's almost incalculable. It's the media equivalent of the Antarctic melting. It's just not even conceivable.
If you don't have a locally engaged and an active community of information generators and disseminators, which a local broadcaster is, you run the risk of people being disengaged from their own community. It's really important to have a local voice that will showcase as much of a neutral and unbiased way the different facets of what it means to be part of a community.
We know, from second to second what's happening at the far ends of the world. We often don't know what's happening around the corner, and we often don't know our neighbours anymore, and I think we need to, and I think people are going to have to. Community is going to become, always has been important, I think it's going to become more and more important.
I would pay more for television if that meant that we would be able to keep that local connection. I think it's fundamental. I believe you can trust what you see on Go, and when I tune into it, I know that that's something that's important.
I am so passionate about local TV and the need for it to survive that I will go out there and campaign for them.
Programs like Go are a result of the CRTC saying thou shalt produce community programming. It's if you want to stay on air, you have to do that. The same reason that the local CTV station is on air is only because they're mandated to be on air. I don't believe that if that mandate wasn't there, that station would be and probably will be gone in a year, because that's when the period ends of their community mandate. And I would guess the same is probably true for shows like Go.
It's so imperative to tell the stories of our community. And I think we can't not have a local TV station.
Without some sort of stability, financial stability, news organizations are just not going to survive. They just won't make it across the finish line. They'll be eviscerated. And so we're looking at, whether or not these become trusts, whether or not there's some sort of government help in terms of subsidies, whether or not, they all go down And it's the CBC that just emerges as the great national reflector of the country. I think we need at this point a little help from government to be innovative and come in with some help during this period, because the economic models are showing that these news organizations will just collapse.
I think the loss of a station like Czech would have a severe impact and would likely not be replaced by anything.
I'm not as pessimistic about local television. Local television has a role. It's very important, and it won't be lost. I think it comes from the community. The community wants this. The community will have this. A local television will never go away. It'll just look different. Stories will be the same.
We don't know what local television will look like in the future, but we do know that somehow we will just keep on telling stories. Because in the words of Philip Pullman, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world.